welcome to another episode of Have Your Say. Today in the WTV studio I got one person who is, and his hobby is, and his profession is law. His name is Augusto Zimmermann. Augusto, welcome here.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
But the first one, which I'm really interested, something about your background for a start. I heard you got a position not too long time ago, but in a distance now, as a
Law Reform Commission.
Law Reform Commissioner of WA.
Yes.
And you specializing on human rights as well, and lots of other things.
Yes, indeed.
Tell us something about, and the audience, something about yourself.
Well, I served as a Law Reform Commissioner for 5 years in Western Australia. I was appointed by the then Attorney General, State Attorney General Christian Porter. Christian Porter is now the Federal Attorney General. And for 5 years I was responsible for, together with my colleagues at the Law Reform Commission, to elaborate on the terms of reference that were sent to us by the then Attorney General. After Christian Porter, then another one succeeded to him. His name is Michael Minchin. And of course, my interactions with the Attorney General were robust sometimes, because I wanted to make sure that I would do the job properly, and that my commitment was not so much to the Attorney General, or even to my own position, but to protect the society by upholding the rule of law and protecting basic rights and freedoms. So every time I thought about making a reform, I was thinking about protecting people in this country, especially in Western Australia, and upholding the rule of law.
Augusto, listening your main aim in that function and that position, I don't think you succeeded very much, or you could succeed very much. I think it's a big ask. Your policy was a big ask to fulfill. Have you succeeded?
Well, I think I have prevented some great tragedies. I mean, in many ways, the role of the Commission is a dangerous role to be played, because the role of the Commission is to instruct the Parliament as to whether or not a certain reform in the legislation, in the legal system, might be necessary. And we did some that I think I'm very proud of having been involved with. For instance, the reform of the judiciary. Most of the suggestions we made in regards to reforming the judiciary were not accepted, because it would imply extra costs, and the government was trying to be saving, and so the budget was short for the government. We didn't have everything we wanted, but at least we made it clear that there is a need to have a judiciary that is accountable to the people. In many ways, these judges and lawyers in Australia, they have been educated by law professors to believe that the role of judges and even lawyers is to apply the law and to serve the interests of their clients. My understanding of the law is a little bit different. That's what I tell my students, that the origins of the common law are connected with this idea of protecting what would be regarded as fundamental rights and freedoms. I think the purpose of the law is to provide for a legal system that ensures that people can have the rights to life, liberty, and property preserved. And if there is any instance of injustice, the law has to be applied, taking into account these universal standards that to be applied to the case in particular.
Yeah, but many times and more, we are not following these basic common sense, common law, because we just, I don't know which direction we're going, but we're definitely going some very strange direction these days in the 21st century, not because we have to revolutionize law as such, but because of some other political reasons, I believe.
Yeah, including the quality of the members of Parliament, because as a commissioner, I was able to interact with some of politicians in Western Australia. And I was not entirely impressed with them. To be frank with you, I think the quality of the politicians in Western Australia, but in Australia in general, is really quite undesirable at the moment. I would like to see 90% of the political class being replaced in this country.
We would like to see that, but they're not replacing themselves. They're replacing their leaders with another useless leader to another useless leader, which is amazing. It could happen
it's
only
looking like a banana republic.
According to your experience with the law reform, what would regard your best achievement?
Well, it was the best achievement in terms of keeping my conscience entirely clear. But it's not the best achievement for the society, because we were in charge of preparing a very important report on domestic violence restraining orders, family violence orders, and I was really concerned about the victim being protected. I was really concerned about the real victims of domestic violence receiving adequate protection, because these people deserve the full support of the community. But at the same time, I was really concerned about protecting principles of natural justice and to preserve due process of law, because I have friends in the family law area, and I can even refer to Professor Patrick Paxson, who is a professor in Sydney, who wrote an article that has been published in a well-known law journal in Sydney, claiming that some lawyers are instructing their clients to make false accusations so that they can take an upper hand when it comes to things such as settlement, property settlements, and child custody issues. I find this a very despicable strategy to be used, and I think that a person who makes such false accusations should be considered to be as also this person a form of perpetrator of domestic violence. I think it is a form of domestic violence to destroy another person's
psychological
life.
violence.
And leading to parental alienation. I have a friend, and you know the person, by the way, who has been 10 years without seeing his kid. And that's because the other person, the other parent, doesn't allow him to see the kid. How on earth we live in a society where the law actually allows these sort of things to happen, and a wonderful man to be unable to see his child for more than 10 years. I find this to be absolutely outrageous, to be frank with you. And when I wrote this report, I thought that these concerns of mine would be taken into account. And I can prove to anybody who wants to know more about this that I sent to the then Attorney General, I photocopied all the letters I had received from the victims of the system. And unfortunately, I don't think that he really took into account anything I told him, because it was perhaps electorally speaking undesirable. And he was just facing another election, and he thought that perhaps I was undermining the prospects of the party to be returning to power. And I told him that my commitment was not to his party, was not to himself as an Attorney General, but to my role as a commissioner to protect the community.
After listening to you, Augusta, some of these aspects of the abusing of the family law system in Australia is coming from the United States.
Absolutely. A person who is an expert on this subject, his name is Stephen Baskerville, and he wrote a book called Taken into Custody. It is an excellent book, and he's now about to actually write an article for my law journal on a similar subject. My law journal is called The Western Australian Jurist. But he proves that this is a very common thing, and that we probably imported this garbage from the United States. And you know what? The consequences of this is the gross undermining of individual rights and freedoms. I'm talking about innocent people in this country who have lost access to their property, but more than that, they have lost access to their children, all on the basis of unsubstantiated allegations. The courts normally do not say the accusation is false. The court says that it's unsubstantiated, but the consequence is, when it comes to the final decision, is to keep the custody with the false accuser, so that this person not only has alienated the innocent parent, but the innocent parent has now to pay full child support to the person, therefore rewarding financially a person who makes such an outrageous thing.
On that note, I think we have to go a short break, but please stay with us, because after the break, we're coming back more on family law with Augusto.